Good evening and welcome to our little get-together tonight. We're here in Taunton at Taunton Community Access and Media. My name is Barry Richard, and I broadcast daily on WBSM Radio in New Bedford. My privilege to be here, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks to the folks who are here in our live studio audience. And we had planned a little bit of a debate tonight between the two Republican candidates for governor of Massachusetts. The primary election, of course, coming up on September 1st. Unfortunately, only one of those candidates opted to participate in tonight's get-together, and that's Brian Shortsleeve. To my left, Michael Minogue opted not to participate for whatever reason. So we'll carry on without it, and we've decided tonight to have maybe less of a formal format and maybe a more laid-back, relaxed format so that we can engage the folks in the audience here and actually give Mr. Shortsleeve a chance to talk about himself a little bit and about the issues in maybe greater length than you would be able to do in a regular formatted debate about some of the issues that are very important to you. We want to find out about the issues that are important to you. First of all, Brian, before I get to you, and because you're obviously very important here tonight, but there's some folks out here that are very important too, and these are the folks that you're asking for their vote.
Right.
And I'm just curious, out of the folks in the audience, has everybody made up their mind yet in this race? If you have, can you raise your hand so I can see? Pretty much, I'd say, what, about half, maybe? About half. So there are still people undecided at this point? No. Okay. So one way or another, I think we have. So you have a chance to convince some folks here tonight.
You bet.
Maybe. And let me ask you first, Brian Shortsleeve, you and I have been speaking for, I don't know, months now on my radio program. You pop up here and there. You're on this afternoon. I love having you on. Tell the folks who don't know who you are and why you're doing this.
Well, Barry, first of all, thank you for hosting. I want to thank you. I want to thank TCAM. Great to have Mayor Shauna O'Connell here as well. Thank you for your leadership, Mayor. For those of you who don't know me out there, my name is Brian Shortsleeve. I'm a proud Marine. I'm a successful businessman, built a great company here in Massachusetts. I'm a proven turnaround specialist. And most importantly, I am the devoted dad of 3 teenage boys that my wife, Liz, and I have had over the past 17 years. But look, I'm running for governor of Massachusetts because every year that goes by, Massachusetts families are working harder, yet they're falling further behind. We need to turn this around. I will fight to lower taxes. I'll fight to lower energy bills. I will fight to cut a lot of waste and abuse out of state government. I'll fight to increase local aid so that this state government can start delivering again for the people of Massachusetts. I'm an entrepreneur. I spent my life building businesses in the private sector, and I love this state. I know we can do better than we're doing right now. It wasn't too long ago that Massachusetts was #1 in a lot of things. We were #1 in job growth. We were #1 place to found a business. Companies were coming here. I want to get us back to those days. Because I'll tell you what, under Maura Healey, this state is moving in the wrong direction at a very rapid clip.
So you've made a selection of a running mate. You've chosen Sean Oliver, who is a city councilor in my hometown, where I live in New Bedford. Why did you choose Sean? What is it about Sean?
Well, look, Sean Oliver is a terrific, terrific leader. He is the only candidate on the ballot for lieutenant governor, and I couldn't be more thrilled about our partnership. When I thought about a running mate, that's really the big, most important first decision you make when you're running for governor. And I was looking for someone like Sean, who's a municipal leader. He's a city councilor in New Bedford. He understands the challenges that cities are facing. He's also a working class guy, came up by his bootstraps. He's a corrections officer. His parents immigrated to this country legally. So he's got a great background as a working class guy, a father, and most importantly, someone who understands for cities like New Bedford how important it is that the state is a real partner to cities. Sean and I were together probably 8 weeks ago now at Fire Station number 9, which you've covered extensively. That was about a $2 million budget shortfall that was closing that fire station. But to put it in perspective, over the last 6 years, state government's grown by $25 billion. State government has never had more money than it does now. Yet what you see in communities like New Bedford, Fall River, and Taunton is unrestricted local aid is the one thing in that gigantic budget that's not going up. And therefore, you see fire stations closing, you see schools closing, you see a lot of Proposition 2.5 overrides. That is 100% the result of Maura Healey's failed policies and, frankly, her failed priorities. We don't have a revenue problem at the state level. We have a priorities problem. I know when I'm governor and Sean is lieutenant governor, he will be laser focused on making sure that state government delivers for cities and towns.
So Bristol County has become a very important part of this race coming up for governor. And we've seen seismic changes in the political makeup of Bristol County. And why is that? What's going on in Bristol County that maybe folks in other part of the state don't see yet?
What I see in Bristol County is a tremendous desire for change. And this is a part of the state that feels overlooked by Beacon Hill, rightly. When you look at what's going on in the state and you look at all that money being spent in Boston, I think areas like Bristol County are being left behind by the state. You've got great Republican leadership here, Mayor Shauna O'Connell. We've got terrific reps like Justin Thurber. We've got some candidates running up and down the ballot here. So I think what I feel in Bristol County is a tremendous energy and a desire for change, and most importantly, a desire to have a Beacon Hill that delivers for areas like Bristol County and Worcester County and Plymouth County versus just continuing to deliver for the power brokers in Boston. By the way, most recently, another crooked Maura Healey deal with the Springfield courthouse. You and I talked about it together on the radio.
I mean,
everywhere you look, you see the Boston power brokers seem to win those inside deals.
So what we've noticed in the last couple of election cycles is that the Republican Party has become a lot more appealing to the working class. I'm not entirely sure they weren't there before, but they've become very active and very outspoken in that. Sean Oliver is somebody who is connected to that, and he can deliver that.
Absolutely, and I think the reason for that is that working class families, middle class families in Massachusetts are getting crushed with the cost of living. They're getting crushed with the cost of electricity and gas bills. The average family in this state today is paying almost $500 a month in electric and gas bills. That's $6,000 a year, Barry. And 1/3 of your bill are now state mandated fees. There are 12 fees on that bill. That's over $1.5 billion a year, which the state legislature in Maura Healey is running through your electricity and gas bills. But let's call them what they are. Those are taxes, and they are taxes to fund Maura Healey's climate agenda. So when I meet middle-class families, working-class families, small businesses, they tell me it's the cost of electric and gas bills, it's the continued increase in property taxes, which is a result of Maura Healey not delivering for communities around local aid. And then, frankly, it's just a continued burden of red tape and regulation. I'm a small business guy. I spent my whole life in the private sector building small businesses. This has become a harder and harder place to be successful with a business. Taxes pile up, regulations pile up. I was with a business last week that is in the cold storage area. They run refrigerated warehouses. They're paying $90,000 a month in electricity bills. Think about that. And they compete against companies in other states where electricity is 1/3 of the cost. We've got to get focused on affordability, and that is why I believe in areas like Worcester County and Bristol County here, there's tremendous interest in our Republican message, and we're going to get a great response, not only on September 1st, but also in November.
You've been messaging about the process that got you to this point for a while now, and the whole convention process and how it worked. And it's almost like an anointing of somebody going in. This is going to be our winner. This is going to be his running mate, and so on and so forth, and kind of excluded the rest of the folks like yourself from all of this. And then we had Signature Gate, where false signatures were turned in, and there's a possibility that some folks are going to be able to get on the ballot. In fact, Michael Walsh, I guess, for Attorney General, is going to get on the ballot. Some of the signatures that he had were questionable, certainly. And you were accused of, I guess, turning on your own party, you and Sean Oliver, working with the Democrats in order to attack fellow Republicans. But the bottom line issue here was always the fraud and the corruption that was there. How do you look at the other side and say, hey, you guys are corrupt and fraudulent, when you're endorsing and supporting fraudulent signatures on your side?
Well, the state convention is an insider's game. It's about 1,800 people. Our state primary is 300,000 voters, Republicans and independents. So in this state, we always select our candidates through a broad primary, which is September 1st, and I feel great about the primary. In terms of where we are in this race, Sean Oliver is the only candidate on the ballot for lieutenant governor, and that's because he did it the right way. And I am proud to stand tall with Sean Oliver. We are the party of election integrity. Thank you. We are the party of election integrity, and it doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans or independents for that matter. When we see voter fraud, when we see signature fraud, we've got to fight against it. So as soon as we saw what was blatant fraud, I mean, you had candidates who were notified in writing by the Secretary of the State that the signatures they were going to submit were likely fraudulent, and they submitted them anyway. It's blatant, and we stood against it. I'm proud to stand against it. By the way, thank you. By the way, Mike Minogue has defended and enabled signature fraud. He attacked Sean Oliver for standing up for what's right. So I think Mike Minogue's got a lot to answer for on that. If he's listening tonight, I'd love to have him call in. I'd love to hear him make a strong defense for election integrity and stand against voter fraud. But I'm proud of what we did with Sean. We won our case, and Sean will be on the ballot in November.
So you've indicated that the signature scandal is one example of the need for voter ID here in Massachusetts. And there was an effort again to try to get it as an amendment on the budget, and it failed. And so is that a priority for Brian Shortsleeve?
I'm a strong supporter of voter ID. In this country, we need to make sure that we restore confidence in our elections. Voter IDs are really, thank you. It's a reasonable request, Barry. You go to the library to get a library card, you need an ID. You go to a liquor store to buy a six-pack of beer, you need an ID. You need an ID to get on an airplane. In fact, you even needed an ID to go to the state Democratic Convention as a delegate. So showing an ID to vote is a reasonable request. And by the way, that's not a partisan issue. Democrats support it, independents support it, Republicans support it. When I'm governor, we will fight hard to make sure that we have voter ID in Massachusetts.
How do you do that, though? You got some strong opposition up there on Beacon Hill.
Well, it starts with leadership. You know, it starts with leadership. We have a governor in Maura Healey that has defended and promoted sanctuary state policies since the time she was Attorney General, and she's still doing it today. So it starts with leadership. We need a governor that will stand up and fight for things like voter ID. We'll end sanctuary state policies anywhere that we can. We'll put security and law enforcement first. I believe that under Maura Healey, our streets have become less safe. Her state parole board every other Friday is releasing convicted criminals who should be in jail for life. And one of those individuals up on Cambridge about a month ago nearly killed 30 people. He had an assault rifle out on Memorial Drive. That guy should have been in jail. He was released by the state parole board. When I'm governor, we'll fire the entire parole board, and we'll put people in that role who put the rights of victims and public safety first. Maura Healey's done the opposite.
So Maura Healey and the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, have fought to, and the legislature for that matter, have fought vigorously to prevent ICE from doing their jobs. And we were talking on the radio today about Sheriff Thoreau here in Bristol County and how he's refused to work with ICE. To what degree would a Brian Shortsleeve administration be receptive to working with ICE and trying to track down some of these dangerous people?
We have got to track down dangerous people. When I am governor, we will cooperate with federal authorities to make sure that convicted criminals are deported. If you look at what goes on in a lot of other states, if you've got convicted alien criminals, you pick them up in the jailhouse door, you meet them at the courthouse door. State and local authorities should cooperate. In Bristol County, you've got a sheriff down here who has refused to turn over convicted criminals to ICE. Up in Boston, you've got a mayor that has declined to cooperate with over 100 detainers for criminal aliens. To me, that makes our streets less safe. And I think when you look at what's going on in Boston today, it's a less safe city than it was 5 years ago. I meet with young families in Boston all the time that feel nervous going out at night. They feel that the police are not keeping order the way that they should. But number one, our state and local authorities should cooperate with the federal authorities anywhere we can to keep the streets safe.
So,
thank you.
Sheriff Thoreau, in refusing to cooperate with ICE, cited, I think it was 2017 Supreme Court ruling here in Massachusetts, SJC ruling, that says, well, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do that. But that's not quite accurate, is it?
It's absolutely not accurate. There's nothing in the Lund decision that prohibits a sheriff in their judgment from cooperating with federal authorities. And in fact, in Plymouth County, we have a great sheriff who does exactly that and cooperates. Let's not forget, cooperating with the federal authorities in areas like that will make our streets safer. It will make the state safer. There's a lot of states in this country where you have state government and local government that cooperates with the feds to pick up convicted criminals or charged criminals in the jailhouse system, in the courthouse system, deport them. And you don't end up with the sort of ICE raids we've seen here. But it starts with leadership. When I'm governor, we will put public safety first. And that'll run all the way from my role as governor down to just putting pressure on local communities to do the same.
So the Department of Justice announced last week that it's sending monitors and some other folks from their task force into Massachusetts, specifically naming Boston and New Bedford. And have you any idea what they're looking for? It seems to me it's a little bit more than just monitoring an election.
Well, I think we should welcome the transparency. I think transparency is really important. If the federal government wants to come here to audit our elections or monitor our elections, I think we should be open to it. I'm a big believer in transparency. I don't know exactly what the scope of their work is. I believe it's Boston and Bedford.
Well, I read in New Bedford Light earlier this week that part of the process is to review. They want voter records. Now, there's a lot of folks that are squawking about that, but that's public record, isn't it?
Voter records are public.
You guys get those voter records so that you can send out flyers in the mail.
You can log
right?
in anyone you can see.
So it's okay for politicians to get that, but they don't want the Department of Justice to get the same list that they got.
This is another example of Maura Healey refusing to cooperate with the federal government on audits. By the way, she's doing the same thing on SNAP. I mean, the federal government has now done 5 different investigations on SNAP or food stamp fraud in Massachusetts just in the last 6 months. And every time they do one of these busts, they find $6, $7, $8 million of fraud. You know what they find? State of Massachusetts is not verifying eligibility for the folks in these programs. You apply, you get in. The state's not doing any sort of auditing of the retailers who are accepting these SNAP benefits, often fraudulently. They tend to be small convenience stores, bodegas. And now that the federal government wants to audit the SNAP program in Massachusetts, we've got one of the highest error rates in the country. Maura Healey is refusing to cooperate. By the way, that could cost taxpayers in this state $400 million because as of January 1st of this year, if your SNAP error rate is more than twice the national average, which ours is in Massachusetts, you got to pay the difference. And that's another example of $400 million likely going out the door in penalties for a program that Maura Healey has refused to manage, audit, or control.
President Joe Biden sent a letter to the governor saying, get your act together. You know, your error rate is too high. You got to get it together, and we got to figure this out. And
she failed a Joe Biden audit. It wasn't even a Donald Trump audit. And by the way, the error rate for SNAP when Charlie Baker was governor was 4%. Today it's 12%. But this is an example of a state government that just continues to grow and grow and grow, and a complete lack of oversight. I mean, SNAP programs, state Medicaid, these are enormous programs that are growing quickly, far outstripping the rate of our revenue growth, and there's almost no oversight. When I'm governor, that'll change. We'll audit everything, not only the legislature, audit every one of those programs, audit the payments going out, audit the verification. I assure you, Barry, having been in state government, done this once, you will find millions and millions of dollars of waste and abuse. I've done it once, I can do it again.
So you've mentioned tonight, you've mentioned many times that Massachusetts doesn't have a revenue problem. We've got plenty of money, a lot of money coming in. It's a spending problem, as you say. We're a wealthy state. We're taking in a lot of money. Recently, the Greater Boston Food Bank reported that 1 in 7 Massachusetts residents receive SNAP benefits. That's 15.2% or 1.1 million people. Around 40% of Massachusetts households last year experienced food insecurity. How does that happen in such a wealthy state?
Well, what you see in the SNAP program is almost 40% growth in that program over the last 7 or 8 years. And my question, when I look at a program like that and that level of growth, my question would be, are we auditing the verification of people to make sure the people that are part of that, or that are in that program, are eligible? I mean, a lot of these programs, don't forget, exist to serve the most vulnerable among us. It's young mothers with children, it's the disabled, it's elderly people that suffer from extreme poverty. But in Massachusetts, what you've seen over the past 6 or 7 years is an enormous growth in those programs, far beyond what they were, where they started. So I think we got to get back to basics, and we got to remember those programs exist to support a narrow group of people and be sure the people in those programs are eligible. I have no confidence, by the way, in this state that the people that are participating in those programs are eligible. Maura Healey's administration.
We're spending a tremendous amount of money on this program, and people are still supposedly going hungry.
Well, look at the SNAP program, look at the home base program, which is apartment rental vouchers, or you look at the shelter program, or you zoom out a little bit. I mean, in 2019, we had a $40 billion state budget. That state budget's grown by 60% over the past 6 years. You know how much our population grew over the past 6 years? Not much.
The population's gone down.
Yeah, I mean, our tax-paying population is declining. Our overall population's up 2 or 3, yet our spending has grown out of control. It comes back to the basics here. We've got to audit everything, audit every program, audit every department, audit every contract that goes out. We talked today on the radio about another Maura Healey contract going out with limited oversight.
Second time you brought that up, so let's go right there, and then I want to ask the audience for some questions after we do that. But there is another scandal, and this involves the construction of a superior court and the awarding of another contract. And this seems to be a pattern with this administration. This is a $600 million contract being awarded with taxpayer money to build a courthouse in Springfield that we wouldn't even own. It would be leased back to us for a period of 40 years, maybe 60 years, at a cost of about $2 billion to taxpayers on top of the initial investment. Come to find out, it's one of either 10 or 12 bids that were submitted for this, okay? Some of the other bidders have filed suit, and they said, look, they rushed this process, they went through, we had a better bid, they didn't look at us. Two of the people that are involved in this are very politically connected people in Massachusetts, and one of them is, of course, the husband of Ayanna Pressley, the congresswoman from the city of Boston, and the other is the interim chairman of the Convention Center Authority in Boston. This thing stinks. Mass Fiscal Alliance asked the governor yesterday to denounce this contract and put it back out to bid, and she refused. She defended it.
She said she has no ethics concerns about this contract. I stared at all I see are ethics concerns. As you said, it's a $2 billion contract, and it's not only the other parties that were unhappy about the outcome. It's the mayor of Springfield, Mayor Sarno, who's a Democrat. He was outraged. Springfield had put together a good plan. They were going to do a 4-site development, including the courthouse. They were going to produce housing. They were going to produce retail. And Maura Healey's team came in and gave the contract to 2 very politically connected individuals, Ayanna Pressley's husband, as you mentioned, as well as the head of the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. Clear conflict of interest. None of those conflicts were revealed. But this is part of a pattern. You know, here we go again. We've seen this play before. Last summer, it was the Mass Pike Service Plaza contract, where the Healey administration left $900 million on the table. They accepted a bid that was $900 million lower. Same set of facts. Insider dealing, politically connected partner. And when you think about $900 million, it's real money. And that's not Maura Healey's money. That is the money of the taxpayers of Massachusetts, the taxpayers of Bristol County. So when I see these insider deals involving billions and billions of dollars of our taxpayer money, I think it's a slap in the face to taxpayers. It's a slap in the face to working families. And Maura Healey's run the least transparent governor's office that we've ever seen. And we just keep getting more examples. And it's one of the reasons when I'm out there talking to people all over the state, they feel like they're paying more every day and they're getting less. And every time they open the newspaper or listen to your radio show, they hear about another big insider deal involving billions of dollars going to things that aren't going to benefit them. We got to get back to the basics.
The food contract, the no-bid food contract that went out for the shelters.
Well, that's back in 23-24. You know, Healey gave a no-bid contract for over $10 million to Spinelli Catering. She also gave an $8 million contract to a black car company out in Truro, Massachusetts, to move migrants around the state. And in that particular example, the state paid $300,000 in late fees and cancellation fees to that bidder. And when Auditor DiZoglio audited the contract, she found there was no stipulation in that contract for cancellation fees. And she asked the folks at the state why they paid $300,000 of fees if there was no stipulation for that. And the answer from the state was, no one ever reviewed a single invoice. We just paid the bills. That is how, Barry, you grow your state government by 60% over the course of 6 years in a state that's suffering declining population and out-migration. Spending's out of control. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of abuse, and I'm the only candidate in this race that has stepped into a state agency like that. I did it a decade ago. We audited every single contract, every program. We put fraudsters in jail if they broke the law. We took on the bureaucracy. We saved millions and millions of dollars for taxpayers. So when it comes to driving transparency, doing those audits, eliminating waste and abuse, everybody can talk the talk. I've walked the walk on it. I've delivered conservative reform for taxpayers, and I'm ready to do it again at the state level. Thank you.
There are two possible scenarios here with these shady contracts. One, that she knows what's going on. That's scary. And the other is that she doesn't know what's going on. And she's got people that are running around rogue doing these things without her knowledge. What do you think is most likely?
She is delivering for the powerful political interest in Boston, to the detriment, as Mayor Sarno in Springfield said, to the detriment of places like Springfield, Worcester, New Bedford. It's clear. I mean, by the way, if we go back a year and we look at that Mass Pike Service Plaza contract, the U.S. Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General did do an audit on that contract after the scandal, and they laid out the 12 or 13 rules of a Massachusetts procurement, and Mass DOT under Healy had violated like 9 of the 12. It wasn't even close. In this particular one we're talking about in Springfield, there was a very clear conflict of interest. The winning bidder happens to run the Mass Convention Center Authority. That is a conflict of interest. That conflict of interest, Barry, was not revealed until the morning the contract was awarded. The fix was in clearly, and it's just another example of a sham insider deal that's costing taxpayers billions of dollars. And when you look at that and you say, why can't the state find $2 million to keep fire station number 9 open in New Bedford, it makes you mad. And I meet voters all the time that are outraged this is going on at the state level, because there's plenty of parts of the state, there's schools in places like West Brookfield, where I was last month, that are closing. There's fire stations. Yet at the state level, they're just spending money and giving away contracts to insiders.
We're about the halfway mark now. I want to welcome in the audience here. If there's anybody with a question they'd like to pose at this point about something we've discussed or something they'd like to hear a little bit more about. And we have a gentleman right there. Could you stand up and bring the microphone over to you? Just speak loudly, because I'm old and I'm hard of hearing. And
Okay, Brian, thank you for being here tonight, first of all. But my question has to do with, you mentioned your success in the business world, and your opponent, Mike Minogue, was also in the business world, but during the first Trump administration, his company, Abiomed, was actually sued for alleged kickbacks to doctors to use his company's medical equipment. They eventually settled that case for $3 million. But my question for you is, has the Trump administration ever investigated you or fined any of your companies?
No, they haven't. And what you're talking about is the $3.1 million settlement in which the Trump Department of Justice believed that Abiomed was bribing doctors to prescribe their products. Mike Minogue's got a very different background than I do. He is, or was, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar healthcare company. I've spent my life helping small companies scale and grow and thrive. My career has been working with smaller businesses, 25 to 50 employee companies, helping them grow, helping them scale. Small businesses are really the backbone of American capitalism. You need a thriving small business environment to create medium-sized businesses and large businesses. And the truth is, in Massachusetts, it's never been harder than it is now to scale smaller businesses. Big businesses have got real advantages. They can deal with compliance complexity. They can deal with tariffs. They can deal with cost changing. It's the smaller firms that really feel the heat. And that's why I think in Massachusetts, we frankly have a crisis when it comes to how hard it's become to scale a small business. That's my background. Minogue is a billionaire, CEO of a healthcare corporation. He flies around the state in his helicopter. He's too busy to debate, by the way. I wish he was here with us, and I think we should have debates all over the state, because voters deserve to hear from us. Refusing to debate is disrespecting voters. There's 300,000 Republicans and independents. They're going to be voting on September 1st, and they should hear from both of us.
why do you think he doesn't want to debate? It's a strategy, obviously, right?
Look, Mike Minogue does not want to answer tough questions. He doesn't like getting tough questions. He doesn't like getting tough questions about the Trump settlement with the DOJ. He doesn't like getting tough questions on his business record. He's never been in public life. I've been stress tested in public life. I've been out there. When I was running the financial restructuring of the T, we hosted over 150 public meetings in front of the cameras every Monday over the course of 2 years. We ran that organization with a huge amount of transparency, and I've demonstrated that I'm available to talk to anyone, any place. Mike doesn't want to do that. He is hanging out in the barn, running a lot of TV ads. But look, hiding out didn't work for Joe Biden. Skipping the debates in 24 didn't work for Biden. I don't think it's going to work for Mike Minogue. There's plenty of time. We've got 6 weeks to go. So I think our voters really deserve a vigorous debate. Because I tell you one thing about Maura Healey. She may be a terrible governor, but she's going to be tough. She's going to be tough on the debate stage. Oh, you bet. And if we wake up the morning after the primary with a candidate who has not been tested, who has not debated, I fear we could be staring at the next Joe Biden. So there's plenty of time. We should have debates, and our voters should see who they think can stand toe-to-toe with Maura Healey. Because there's only 2 questions our voters should be asking right now. Number 1, who can beat Maura Healey? And number 2, who's got the right background in business and government to turn this state around? I can do both those things, and I'd love to hear from Mike Minogue on his solutions.
Any other questions at this point? Gentleman right there. Well, him. That's him. We'll get to you next. Okay. All right.
Brian, thank you for being here. Barry, for such a great host. Real quick, as Governor Shortsleeve, what are your first top 3 priorities?
Well, thank you for the question. I've laid out very, very detailed plans of exactly what I'm going to do as governor. And I'm the only candidate in this race who has laid out detailed plans. Day 1, we kick off the audit that 72% of us voted for. Not only the audit of the legislature, but the audit of every single executive branch program, every contract, every element of the cost structure. We have got to eliminate waste here. We've got to make government work better for people. So we do that day 1. Day 1, we strip all of those state-mandated fees out of your electric and gas bills. We don't have the highest electric and gas bills in the country in Massachusetts by mistake. We have it because of bad public policies. Only Hawaii has higher electricity rates than Massachusetts. It doesn't have to be that way. Those are decisions that have been made. We can turn them around. The governor controls the Department of Public Utilities. I'll do that day 1. I will also roll back taxes. We're going to put that income tax ballot question right back on the ballot. It'll be on the ballot in 28. When I'm governor, I will fight hard to reduce taxes. Most small businesses in Massachusetts pay at the individual rate because they're organized as S-corps. So cutting taxes from 5% to 4% benefits middle-class families, but it also enables small businesses to hire and to grow. And finally, Mike, I will make sure that homeless veterans have priority for all of these state programs, whether it's the right to shelter law, thank you. Whether it's the right to shelter law or the home-based program, homeless veterans should get priority. As a Marine veteran, I care a great deal about homeless veterans and veterans in general, and they should be at the top of our list when it comes to those programs, not the bottom of our list. And that'll be a busy first day. I'll walk you through day 2, maybe a little later in the show.
This gentleman
Another
over here had
question?
a question.
Hi. You're one of the only candidates that has taken the No New Taxes pledge. Can you talk a little bit about why that makes a difference?
I think in Massachusetts, when you look at where we are as a state today, you've got to focus on the private sector. Why does private sector job growth matter? Here's why it matters. If you have a private sector that's growing, it means people are coming here and businesses are coming here. This was the fastest growing state in the whole Northeast for about a decade, from the mid 2015s up through COVID. If you look at Massachusetts today, we are dead last nationally, 50th out of 50. Think about that. Dead last in private sector job growth. We've lost 30,000 private sector jobs since Maura Healey took office. When you ask businesses why they're leaving the state or individuals why they're leaving the state, taxes is always the number one issue, along with the cost of electricity and gas. We've got to get Massachusetts growing again. We're one of only 12 states that hasn't cut taxes in the past 5 years. If you look around the country, states like North Carolina have cut business and individual taxes 6 times over 10 years. There's a lot of Massachusetts companies and there's a lot of Massachusetts individuals going to places like that. So if we're going to get this economy growing again, we're going to get entrepreneurs to stay here, We're going to give young people opportunity. You've got to get the tax rates back to a much more competitive level. Thank you.
One of the more notable quotes of this campaign so far from Maura Healey has been, "Remember, I stopped 2 natural gas pipelines from coming into this state. And then we had the winter from hell with all of the price hikes and people were struggling and so on and so forth." It's been the priority of this administration and the legislature to move toward a carbon neutral plan for, I guess, 2050, go carbon zero and whatever. Alternative energy, no nukes, no coal, no electric plants, nothing like that. We're going to do this with windmills and we're going to do it with solar panels. How realistic is that?
Well, you could ask yourself that question. Look back at January and February. As we remember, it was a cold winter. And by January 26th, when that temp got to about 25 degrees, it started snowing. Every solar panel in the state was buried under 3 feet of snow. The windmills out on the water weren't running because they were covered in ice. And guess what? Even the Canadians turned off Hydro-Quebec because they needed the power. And here in Massachusetts, we were back to firing up oil-fired generation plants in places like Braintree that are belching out hundreds of metric tons of emissions. Why is that? Well, it's because renewables didn't show up when it got cold and it got gray. The reality in Massachusetts is the vast majority of home heating is natural gas. We need more natural gas. We've got the cheapest natural gas in the entire world is in the Marcellus Shale, which is only about 300 miles from here in Pennsylvania. Instead of tapping into that, we buy liquefied natural gas at the Everett terminal for 6 to 8 times what it would cost to bring it in from Pennsylvania. So when I'm governor, we will build the pipelines. That would deliver thousands and thousands of dollars of savings to average families. We will also turn those net zero 2030 and 2050 mandates into recommendations. They should not be mandates, they should be recommendations. Everybody wants clean air and clean water. I've got 3 teenage boys. My wife and I care a lot about those things. And this is a state that's always done a really good job when it comes to the environment. But we've got to pursue those goals without bankrupting small businesses and driving people out of the state. We can do both. And by the way, this is a bipartisan issue, Barry. There's plenty of Democrats in the legislature who would love to see all those fees stripped out of your electricity
Well, I think once the real
bills.
costs begin to show up, and they receive electric bills and heating
You
bills
bet they
in the mail
do.
too. So,
Yeah.
But Maura Healey was in New Bedford, I guess maybe 2 weeks ago now, and she was on the waterfront, and she was meeting with all of the windmill people and talking about how you guys, boy, you are our heroes during that blizzard. You got us through with all the energy. And the Boston Herald ran a story the day after indicating that only, I think it was 4% or maybe less of the energy that provided us the heat that we needed during that actually came from renewables. Most
That's
of
right.
It came from oil.
Well, we had to fire up oil because that's all we have when there's a crisis. By the way, the other energy source that's really delivered in that stretch, which was about 8 weeks when it was really cold, was nuclear. 25% is nuclear. We should do more nuclear. There's amazing technology with modular nuclear now that we could be leaning into. But when I'm governor, we'll focus on nuclear, but most importantly, we'll focus on building natural gas pipelines because natural gas is clean and cheap compared with the alternative of oil, which is where we're going to continue to end up in this state in times like this past winter, when the weather is not cooperating. But it's also about dollars and cents. We have the highest electricity rates in the country other than Hawaii. And if you ask Maura Healey's own Economic Development Secretary, Eric Paley, he has said publicly that the number one question companies ask when they're looking at Massachusetts is energy cost. And when you tell them we're 34 cents a kilowatt hour, which is about 3 times the national average, it's a very short conversation.
Yeah.
No companies are coming here, companies are leaving here. But it's just bad public policy. We can change it. With a governor that's focused on affordability and focused on driving down costs, we can change those things.
A lot of concern these days about AI, and the facilities use a lot of power, and a lot of folks are concerned about draining power that they might use, or of course, escalating the costs on that. What's your position on AI?
Well, if you look at the big data centers, I think we should start with communities that want them in their community. Some will, some won't. But most of the big data center players these days want to produce their own electricity on site. They want to build a 1 million square foot data center.
Should that be mandated?
I believe that it should. And here's what they want to do. They want to buy those Siemens or GE gas turbine engines, which are highly efficient. They can produce a ton of power. You probably need 15 of them lined up to power a hyperscaler data center. But Barry, it requires natural gas. You have to have natural gas. And we have a governor.
We almost had 2 pipelines.
Yeah, well, we have a governor not only that killed the pipelines, but has, at the state level, prohibited new natural gas hookups. So if you go to the state right now and say, hey, I'm in a community that wants a data center, we've got a provider, they'll produce their own power, but we've got to hook into natural gas, the answer will be no. And that's a huge missed opportunity for this state. We are a knowledge economy. I mean, we are a state that counts on technology jobs, technology employment, and I fear that if we don't become part of this AI boom, we're going to be left behind. But it requires a governor that's willing to work with these folks to allow them to produce power on site, which means natural gas. You can't run a data center on windmills and solar panels, unfortunately.
Any other questions out here? That gentleman right there.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for coming tonight. My question is, your opponent, Mike Minogue, has a lot of scandals on his resume, including 149 deaths caused by his company. What does your record look like? Is it clean?
Well, my record's clean, but this is another reason we should have a debate, because there's a lot of questions I'd like to ask Mike Minogue about his business record. And there's a lot of questions I can assure you Maura Healey and the Democrats will be asking Mike Minogue about his business record if he were to become our nominee. This is why we have debates. Let's put it all out there. I'm an open book. Look, I've said I will go anywhere around the state. I'll answer any questions. I'll do a debate anytime, any place. And that's why you have debates. You allow people to ask the tough questions. And in public life, Barry, you've got to be willing to take the tough questions. You've got to be able to answer them. We need a candidate that can go toe-to-toe with Maura Healey. If we have a candidate for governor who has avoided debates, who has avoided transparency, who's not willing to engage, I think they're going to find it very tough sledding against Maura Healey.
There's an assault on the Second Amendment here in Massachusetts. There has been for a while, but Governor Healey signed last year a very restrictive, some say unconstitutional, gun law. And there's a group, the Civil Rights Coalition, Toby Leary, we were talking about earlier, and others that are fighting to reverse that on the ballot this fall. And we don't have a ballot numbers, a question number assigned to it yet that I
That's
believe.
right.
But it's the way the question is worded. And we've had some problems with wording questions this year, haven't we? Folks have to understand that if you want to repeal this gun law, you have to vote no. It's kind of confusing. I mean, because people think, well, I want to go and repeal, so I'd vote yes. But you got to vote no, because the question is worded
Right.
In a way that asks you, do you want to keep the law, as opposed to do you want to repeal it? So that's confusing. Where do you stand on the Second Amendment, on the Civil Rights Coalition's efforts, and on this repeal question?
Well, as a Marine veteran, I am a strong supporter of Second Amendment rights. I was at Cape Cod Gun Works last night with the Civil Rights Coalition, Toby Leary, John Mawhinney, the folks from Goal. It was great. It was a great meeting. And when you look at Chapter 135, that is an attack on basic constitutional rights. We have a right in this country to bear arms. That particular law is an attack on that right. And I would ask people out there, what other civil liberties would you want to see our state government restrict? Freedom of speech, freedom of privacy. I would also tell you that 135 will be very damaging to urban communities. It imposes a lot of cost around gun ownership, and in a lot of urban areas where people have lower incomes, it's harder to do some of the things that are required to do in 135. And frankly, there's a lot of communities where people need to own a firearm to protect themselves or to protect their business. So I think it's a bad law. It's a classic example of governmental overreach. It's punishing law-abiding citizens, and it does nothing to address the root causes of the real problem. And
What is the ultimate intent? Do you think they're trying to disarm the citizens of Massachusetts?
Well, I think it's a direct attack on Second Amendment rights is what it is. And, you know, Maura Healey will tell you she's doing it to make Massachusetts more safe. Maura Healey's done nothing to make this state more safe. if she wants to make the state more safe, what she should do is replace her entire state parole board with members that care about and prioritize victims' rights instead of continuing to release convicted criminals, which is what she's been doing.
Is there anybody in this room that owns a gun? Any gun owners? Got a few. Are you set to repeal 135? Yeah, seems pretty. Taunton, there were gun owners in Taunton, there's no question about that. Any other questions in the audience over here? Right there, that young lady. Well, she's got it written down, so you're in trouble now.
Well, in 2022, Massachusetts Republicans lost seats across the state and all statewide offices with a pro-life candidate at the top of the ticket. Is it true that your opponent is pro-life and would doom the GOP's chances in November?
Well, thank you for the question. I am the pro-choice candidate in this race. I am the candidate who can win. In Massachusetts, 66% of the voters are now registered as independents. So to win a general election in this state, you've got to have a great appeal to independent voters. I am confident I can appeal to independent voters. I'm a businessman. I'm a moderate on that particular issue. I support a woman's right to choose. And when I'm governor, I'll fight for those rights. But to win a statewide election in Massachusetts, we know what it takes, and we need a candidate that can not only appeal to Republicans, but can appeal to that broad swath of independents. Mike Minogue will never win a statewide election in Massachusetts. I'm already out polling him head-to-head with Maura Healey in the most recent poll based on my relative strength among independent voters, his relative weakness. We've seen this play before. If we nominate a candidate like we did 4 years ago that does not appeal to independents, that does not want to debate, that will not engage, I fear we're going to have the same result we did 4 years ago. And that's why I've got great support from folks like Mayor O'Connell, many members of the state legislature, state reps, state senators. They want a candidate at the top of the ticket that can beat Maura Healey. I can beat Maura Healey. Mike Minogue's not going to win a statewide election.
So you and I were talking today on the radio about how finally Maura Healey has had an epiphany. There are two Republicans in the race, and she remembered their names yesterday. In speaking with Tim Dunn of the Boston Herald, she remembered that Brian Shortsleeve is running and Mike Minogue is running. And to the best of my knowledge, this is the first time that she's mentioned you both by name. That seems to mark some sort of a turning point here. But at the same time, she's continuing on with the same campaign strategy of Trump, 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 Trump. So Governor Healey, utility rates are high. Yeah, but Trump, 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 Trump. Governor Healey, crime is through the roof. Yeah, but Trump, 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 Trump. So now, as of yesterday, it's Brian Shortsleeve, Mike Minogue, and Trump, 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 Trump. So you guys, she said, if I remember correctly, should not be elected governor if you, well, there are two aspects of that, if you support ICE and if you support Donald Trump. So your name from this point forward is going to be linked to Donald Trump's and everything that Maura Healey says.
Well, look, Maura Healey wants to run against Donald Trump. Donald Trump's not on the ballot. What's on the ballot is Maura Healey's failed policies. That's what's on the ballot. And there's a reason. Thank you. We don't have the highest electricity rates in the country because of policies in Washington, D.C. That's Maura Healey's bad policies right here. Cape Cod potato chips, right down the road in Hyannis. They moved from Hyannis to North Carolina. They didn't move because of Donald Trump. He's president in North Carolina as well. They moved out of this state because taxes are too high, regulations are too high, energy costs are too high. So Maura Healey's going to run against Donald Trump. I'm running for the people of Massachusetts. I'm running for the middle-class families that are getting pushed out of the state, for the small businesses that are leaving. Healey knows she can't run on her record, whether it's housing production, taxes, private sector job growth, the cost of living. On every metric, Healey's policies have been a failure. So I think she's got a lot to answer to, and I look forward to continuing to make the case and make sure that people out there know that there are alternatives, that there's a different set of policies here. We do not have to continue down a path of higher taxes, more regulation. By the way, if Maura Healey is reelected, get ready in 2027 for a mileage tax. It's coming. It's part of the Freedom to Move Act. Get ready for much higher taxes on your natural gas bills. There's a couple things pending there that I think you'd see big hikes. She's proposed a tax on prescription drugs. So there's a raft of new taxes that Maura Healey's already talking about that I expect in 2027 that you would see, none of which are good, and all of which will continue to drive people out of the state.
So we've seen gas prices go through the roof because of the war. Should be temporary, should be coming down. You called immediately when the war broke out for a temporary suspension of the state gas tax. Nobody responded to that.
Well, to me, leadership means taking bold action. I'm a Marine. They teach you in the Marine Corps as a leader, take action, have a bias for
Were you
action.
surprised, though, that nobody responded?
Well, I think Maura Healey has never taken action to reduce cost. Everything she's done makes the state more affordable. When I'm governor, we'll suspend the gas tax. My proposal was to suspend the gas tax until gas gets below $2.50 a gallon. That's a common sense thing that we can do that would make people's lives more affordable. You suspend the gas tax, you roll the income tax back, you strip fees out of people's utility bills. You're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars of savings to middle class families. That's what we should be doing. Healey won't touch it. She's generally just finding new taxes to propose.
And
new
Minogue
ways to
never
increase.
weighed in on it that I'm aware of.
No, I mean, I called for that immediately. I haven't heard anything from
And
Mike
I don't
Minogue.
recall any of the minority leaders in the House or Senate even.
I mean, I've laid out very detailed plans. I've
Yeah.
laid out a car plan. I will end annual auto inspections. We'll suspend the gas tax. We'll go to a 5-year cycle on registrations. Those are common sense things we can do. 35 states out there don't have auto inspections anymore. You know why? Because they cost a lot of money and they cost a lot of time, and there's no proven safety benefits. So I've laid out very detailed plans and ways I think we can make the state work better for middle-class families. I haven't heard anything from Mike Minogue, and I certainly haven't heard anything from Maura Healey on that front.
So local aid is an issue that every city and town in Massachusetts. Local aid is an important issue to every city and town in Massachusetts. They watch for it every year. The mayor where I live, John Mitchell, says we haven't seen an appreciative increase in local aid, unrestricted local aid, since 2008. He's facing a $32 million deficit right now, closing a fire station. I know Lakeville, I know other communities around this area, teachers, schools, libraries, and everything else, because they're same problem, no local aid coming down. You've and Sean Oliver have said that local aid, unrestricted local aid, would increase.
Absolutely. And that's a question of priorities. You know, think about our state budget. We've tacked on $25 billion of incremental spending since 2019. And over that same period of time, local aid has grown by a couple $100 million. Very, very small. Cities like New Bedford and Taunton have seen almost no increase. So you've got state government growing exponentially, frankly, to fund a lot of these large welfare programs, to include the SNAP program we talked about, cash welfare, the various homelessness programs, state Medicaid. But local aid's always at the bottom of the list. That's why families in communities like Bristol County are getting hit with Prop 2.5 over increases. Every time you hear about a Prop 2.5 override, make no mistake, that is because state government is absorbing more and more of the state revenue up at Beacon Hill, not pushing out. So when I'm governor,
sending it back.
not sending it back. I mean, it's the one item in an enormous budget which basically hasn't grown in 6 years. So when I'm governor, we will start the budgeting process by doubling local aid. That would double it from 1.3. Thank you.
We've got time for another question. Any other questions? Is there anybody out there that had a question? This gentleman's writing over there on his question. Oh, in the back there, right there. Okay.
Yeah, Brian, what is your position on the MBTA Act?
Yeah, I'm an opponent of the MBTA Communities Act. It's a bad law. It should be repealed. That's an example of governmental overreach. It's an example of administrative overreach. There's a lot of communities in areas like Bristol County that don't have the infrastructure, whether it's water and sewer infrastructure or other basic infrastructure to support multifamily housing. When it comes to building more housing, we should take a carrot approach, not a stick approach. And I think 3A, the MBTA Communities Act, is an example of the state trying to force something on local communities. By the way, it's also not working. You know, when that law was jammed through, they talked about creating 300,000 units. You know how many they think they're gonna create now? Less than 20,000. What does it show you? It shows you that more laws do not equal more housing. laws like that were passed with great fanfare are basically eviscerating local zoning and trying to force communities to do things often they don't have the resources to do, and they won't work. When I'm governor, we'll build a lot of housing, but it won't be through the MBTA Communities Act.
Brian, believe it or not, we've got about 4 minutes left. The hour flew by. And so I'd like you to take a look maybe in the camera now
Sure.
and address the folks at home and make a plea for why they should vote for you on September 1st.
Well, let me first of all thank you again, Barry, for hosting. I want to thank TCAM. I want to thank Mayor Shauna O'Connell for being here. I want to thank my wife, Liz, for being here. Thank you, Liz. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your listeners. I'm a proud Marine. I'm a businessman. I'm a devoted father. I can win this race. I can beat Maura Healey. There's really two things that our voters ought to be asking themselves as we look out at this primary. The number one question is, who can beat Healey? And the number two question is, who has the right background to get this state turned around? I have spent my life building companies in the private sector. Massachusetts has always worked better with balance. When you have a businessman in the corner office who understands how to solve problems, how to attract companies here, how to get costs under control. When you run businesses, you live in the real world. You have to manage your cost. You have to think about ways to build your business. I'll bring those skills to the table. I'm also someone who's proven my ability as a government reformer. Over a decade ago, I was asked by the then governor to step in on a 2-year assignment when the MBTA faced a massive fiscal crisis. We had a $300 million deficit. It took me about 12 months to cut that deficit in half and 24 months to close it entirely. How do we do it? We audited everything. We audited every department. We audited every program. We found millions and millions of dollars in waste and abuse. Thank you. We took on the bureaucracy. We threw fraudsters in jail. And when was the last time you heard anyone on Beacon Hill throw fraudsters in jail? I know how to do it. I've walked the walk. And this state needs a turnaround. That is why I am running for governor. This is a great state. I know we can do better. I want us to be number one again. Number one in jobs. Number one place for young people to stay. But to achieve that, we've got to audit government. We've got to get spending under control. We've got to cut waste out of state government. And then we've got to get the economy growing again. When Liz and I talk about why we're in this race, it always comes back to our 3 boys. You know, I want them to come back to Massachusetts after college. I want them to build their families here and chase their dreams here and start companies here. If we don't get cost in this state under control, if we don't fix the affordability crisis, if we don't cut taxes, we're going to continue to see young people leaving the state. The fastest demographic of people leaving Massachusetts are young people. And generally, when I talk to young people, they need 2 things. They need a job and they need a place to live. We're going to get the state growing again. It'll be a great place for young people. I'm asking for your vote. The Republican primary is September 1st. Independents can vote in the primary. You can request a ballot by mail if you're interested in voting by mail. Please follow us online at brianshortsleeve.com or on Facebook at Brian Shortsleeve for Massachusetts. And Barry, again, I really appreciate you doing this. This is a fun discussion, and we should do it again.
Absolutely. Maybe Mike will join us.
Mike's always welcome.
You know, there's one thing you mentioned. You mentioned you can vote by mail. The ballots, the applications for ballots have been sent out. So people should be getting those now if they haven't yet, an application to send in. And I know
That's right.
I'm leery about mail-in balloting, but the other guys are doing it, right?
Well, look, it is in this state. It is the law of the land. So my recommendation to people is the election is the Tuesday before Labor Day. That can be a hard week for people. Kids are going back to school. Maybe you're on vacation. So in Massachusetts, you can vote by mail. It's a very simple online application. The ballots have been printed. They are available. So for anyone who's not going to be around on Election Day, request a ballot, get the vote in. We've got 300,000 Republicans and independents that vote on our primaries, and I hope everyone comes out. And I'm asking for your vote.
And the dates will be posted for voting early in person.
Yeah, I believe. I think the early voting will be starting by August 1st, which is right around the corner. And Election Day is Tuesday, the Tuesday before Labor Day.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brian, for being here. Appreciate it. And thank you, TMAC, for having us here. It's a great night. Thank you all for coming. Don't forget to vote on September 1st. Good night, everybody.